At 8:20 a.m. on January 7, 1945, Major Thomas McGuire Jr. climbed into the cockpit of his P-38L Lightning at Dulag Airfield on Leyte Island, knowing he was 2 kills away from becoming America's top ace. 24 years old, 38 confirmed victories, the second highest scoring American pilot in World War II. Only Richard Bong had more kills. Bong had 40. McGuire needed 2 more Japanese aircraft to tie him, 3 to beat him, and Bong had just been ordered home. The race was over. McGuire had won by default, except it didn't feel like winning. McGuire wanted to beat Bong in combat, not on a technicality, but Bong was gone. Sent back to the United States for a war bond tour, McGuire was now the highest-scoring active American fighter pilot in the Pacific Theater. The title felt hollow. Everyone knew Bong's record, 40 kills. McGuire's 38 would always be second place unless he got 2 more. The mission briefing at 7:30 had been routine. 4 P-38s would escort a flight of P-47 Thunderbolts on a strafing run against Japanese positions on Negros Island. Intelligence reported minimal enemy air activity. Maybe a few zeros. Maybe nothing. McGuire almost didn't take the mission. Escort duty meant flying defensive patterns while the P-47s attacked ground targets. Boring. No opportunities for kills. But the operations officer mentioned that Japanese fighters had been spotted near Negros 2 days earlier. That changed everything. If Zeros were in the area, McGuire wanted to be there. He assembled his flight, 4 P-38s, McGuire leading, Major Jack Rittmeyer on his wing, Captain Edwin Weaver leading the second element, Lieutenant Douglas Throp flying Weaver's wing. All experienced pilots, all had multiple kills, but none of them had 38. McGuire's P-38L carried full internal fuel, 410 gallons, plus 2 150-gallon drop tanks under the wings, external tanks that extended the fighter's range but added weight and drag. Standard procedure was to drop the external tanks before engaging enemy fighters. The extra weight made the P-38 sluggish, reduced maneuverability, increased stall speed. Every pilot knew this. It was fundamental. But drop tanks also meant extended patrol time, more time over enemy territory, more opportunities to find targets. McGuire kept the tanks attached. The P-38's Allison V1710 engines started smoothly. Twin 12-cylinder engines producing 1,600 horsepower each at war emergency power. The fighter weighed 21,600 pounds with full fuel and drop tanks. Heavy. The P-38L's maximum takeoff weight was 21,600 pounds exactly. McGuire was at the limit. The tower cleared McGuire for takeoff at 8:22. The heavily loaded P-38 accelerated slowly, 60 mph, 80, 100, 120. At 140 mph, McGuire pulled back on the yoke. The fighter lifted off reluctantly. The drop tanks added 300 pounds of weight and significant drag. Climb rate was reduced by nearly 40%. McGuire climbed at 1,500 feet per minute instead of the normal 2,000. The formation assembled at 5,000 feet. 4 P-38s in combat spread. McGuire leading, Rittmeyer 500 yards to his right, Weaver and Throp stepped up 1,000 feet behind. The 8 P-47 Thunderbolts they were escorting formed up below at 3,000 feet. The entire strike force turned west toward Negros Island. 45 miles, flight time approximately 15 minutes. McGuire checked his fuel, 710 gallons total, 410 internal, 300 in drop tanks. At cruise power, the P-38 burned 100 gallons per hour. He had 7 hours of fuel, plenty for the mission and return flight. His ammunition counters showed full loads, 500 rounds of .50 caliber per gun, 4 guns, 2,000 rounds total, plus 150 rounds of 20mm cannon ammunition, enough firepower to destroy a dozen enemy aircraft, if he found them. The flight crossed the coast of Leyte at 8:30, open water ahead, the Visayan Sea. Negros Island was visible on the horizon, dark green mountains rising from blue ocean. The island held approximately 15,000 Japanese troops, dug into the mountains, fortified positions. The P-47s would strafe supply routes and troop concentrations. The P-38s would keep Japanese fighters off them. Simple mission, low risk. McGuire hated low-risk missions. Low risk meant low opportunity. At 8:42, the formation approached Negros from the east. The P-47s descended to 1,000 feet and began their attack runs. McGuire's P-38s climbed to 8,000 feet. High cover position. From altitude, McGuire could see the entire island. No enemy aircraft visible. The sky was empty. The P-47s made their first strafing pass. 50 caliber tracers raked Japanese positions. Secondary explosions indicated ammunition or fuel dumps hit. The mission was going perfectly, which meant it was boring. McGuire scanned the sky continuously. Nothing. The P-47s made a second pass. Still no enemy reaction. Where were the Zeros? Intelligence had reported fighters in the area. McGuire needed those fighters. 2 kills, just 2 more. Then he'd have 40, tied with Bong. Then 1 more kill and he'd be the top American ace. The record would be his. But the sky remained empty. At 8:48, Rittmeyer's voice crackled over the radio. "Bandits, 4 o'clock low!" McGuire looked right and down. 3 aircraft climbing from the north. Small, single engine. Zeros. Mitsubishi A6M Type 0 fighters. Japan's most famous aircraft. Fast, maneuverable, deadly in turning fights, but vulnerable. No armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks. 1 good burst would destroy a Zero. McGuire had killed 16 Zeros during his combat tour. He knew their strengths and weaknesses. The 3 Zeros climbed toward the P-47s. They were trying to intercept the American attack aircraft. Standard Japanese tactic: ignore the fighters, kill the bombers. But McGuire wasn't going to let that happen. He rolled his P-38 into a dive. Rittmeyer followed. Weaver and Throp held position as top cover. McGuire dove at 400 mph. The 3 Zeros were 3,000 feet below, climbing through 4,000 feet. They hadn't seen the P-38s yet. They were focused on the P-47s. Classic mistake. Always check your 6. McGuire closed to 800 yards. The lead Zero was in his gun sight. Perfect deflection angle. He squeezed the trigger. The 450 caliber guns fired. The 20mm cannon joined them. The combined stream looked like a solid bar of light. The tracers arced across the sky and missed. McGuire had misjudged the deflection. The Zero was climbing faster than calculated. The bullets passed behind the target. The Zero pilot saw the tracers and snap-rolled left. All 3 Zeros scattered. They'd seen the P-38s now. The ambush had failed. The 3 Zeros split up. 1 went left, 1 right, 1 straight down. Classic separation tactic. Force the attacker to choose 1 target. The other 2 would escape or counterattack. McGuire followed the Zero diving toward the deck. The aircraft was 2,000 feet below, diving at 300 mph. McGuire's P-38 was faster. He closed rapidly. 1,000 yards, 800, 600. The Zero leveled off at 200 feet above the jungle canopy, treetop level. The Japanese pilot was using terrain for cover, flying between hills, turning sharply around jungle ridges, making himself a difficult target. McGuire followed. His airspeed was 380 mph, too fast for low-altitude maneuvering. The P-38 wasn't designed for hedge hopping. It was a high-altitude interceptor. But McGuire wasn't giving up the chase. Rittmeyer called over the radio. "Tommy, you're too low. Pull up." McGuire ignored him. The Zero was 400 yards ahead, making hard turns, left, right, climbing, diving. The pilot was good, experienced. He knew the P-38's weakness. The Lightning couldn't turn with a Zero at low altitude, not with drop tanks. The external fuel tanks added weight and drag. They reduced turn rate by 30%. Every manual, every briefing, every instructor said the same thing. Drop your external tanks before engaging. McGuire still had his tanks attached. He'd forgotten to drop them in the excitement of the chase. Or maybe he'd chosen not to drop them. Saving fuel meant longer patrol time, more chances for additional kills after this one. The Zero pulled into a hard right turn. McGuire followed. The P-38 turned sluggishly. The heavily loaded fighter didn't respond like it should. McGuire pulled harder on the stick. The turn tightened, but the Zero was turning inside him, easily. The Japanese pilot was using the Zero's superior maneuverability. He was baiting McGuire into a turning fight at low altitude with external tanks. Every choice was wrong. McGuire should have broken off, climbed back to altitude, reset the engagement. But he didn't. He stayed in the turn. Because this Zero could be kill number 39, 1 step closer to Bong's record, 1 step closer to being the top ace. If you've ever wondered why the best pilots sometimes make the worst decisions, you're watching it happen right now. Skill doesn't prevent mistakes. Sometimes skill makes you confident enough to ignore the warnings everyone else follows. Rittmeyer called again. "Tommy, break off, you're too slow." McGuire's airspeed had dropped to 240 mph in the turn. Normal turning speed for a clean P-38 was 280 mph. With drop tanks, minimum turning speed was 300 mph. Below that, the aircraft became unstable. Below 220 mph with drop tanks, the P-38 would stall. McGuire was 20 mph above stall speed. No margin for error. The Zero tightened its turn. McGuire pulled harder on the stick. Maximum G-forces. The P-38's airspeed dropped to 230 mph. 10 mph above stall. The aircraft was on the edge. Rittmeyer watched from 1,000 feet above. He could see what McGuire couldn't. The P-38 was mushing. The wings were losing lift. The nose was dropping. The aircraft was entering a stall. But McGuire didn't feel it. He was focused on the Zero. The target was 300 yards ahead, almost in gun range. One more turn and he'd have the shot. The Zero pulled vertical, straight up, maximum climb. The Zero could climb at 3,000 feet per minute. The P-38 with drop tanks could barely manage 100 feet per minute. McGuire pulled the nose up to follow. Wrong decision. The P-38's airspeed was already critically low. Pulling vertical bled energy even faster. The airspeed dropped to 220 mph. Exactly at stall speed with drop tanks. The stick started shaking in McGuire's hands. Stall warning. The aircraft was telling him to push the nose down, recover. But McGuire didn't push. He pulled. He wanted the shot. The Zero was climbing away. McGuire needed altitude to follow. He pulled harder. The airspeed dropped to 210 mph, below stall speed. The shaking intensified. Then the left wing dropped. The P-38 snap-rolled left, violent, uncontrollable. The left wing had stalled completely. No lift, just dead weight dropping toward the jungle. McGuire's altitude was 200 feet, 2 seconds from impact. He had 3 options: push the stick forward to break the stall, jettison the drop tanks to reduce weight, or pull the stick back and try to muscle the aircraft level. McGuire chose the worst option. He pulled back. Fighter pilot instinct. When you're falling, you pull. But pulling at stall speed makes everything worse. The aircraft doesn't climb, it just stalls deeper. The right wing stalled. Now both wings had no lift. The P-38 fell like a stone. McGuire slammed the throttles forward to war emergency power. Both engines responded. 3,200 horsepower, maximum thrust, but power can't fix a stall. Only airflow over the wings creates lift, and the wings were stalled. The aircraft dropped through 150 feet, 1 second from the jungle canopy. Rittmeyer watched from above. He could see exactly what was happening. The P-38 was in a departure stall. Both wings stalled. The aircraft was tumbling, nose up but falling, engines screaming at full power, but the fighter was descending at 2,000 feet per minute. Physics was winning. McGuire finally hit the drop tank jettison button. Too late. The external tanks separated and fell away. The P-38's weight dropped by 300 pounds instantly. But the aircraft was at 100 feet, no altitude to recover. The nose dropped, the stall started to break. Airflow began returning to the wings, but the ground was right there. Trees filled McGuire's windscreen. 50 feet. The engines were at maximum power. The airspeed was increasing. 220 mph, 230. The wings were generating lift again. The descent rate slowed. 1,500 feet per minute. 1,500. McGuire pulled back on the stick, gently this time. The nose started rising. The aircraft was recovering, 25 feet above the trees, still descending but slower. 10 feet, 5 feet. The P-38's belly almost touched the jungle canopy. Then the left propeller hit a tree. The propeller was spinning at 2,400 RPM. It struck a hardwood tree trunk. The 3-bladed propeller disintegrated instantly. Metal fragments exploded in all directions. The left engine tore free from its mounts. The sudden asymmetric thrust yanked the P-38 hard left. McGuire couldn't compensate. The aircraft rolled inverted. The cockpit canopy hit the trees first. The plexiglass shattered. Then the right wing hit. The wing folded backward. The fuel tank ruptured. 410 gallons of high-octane aviation fuel sprayed across the wreckage. The right engine was still running at full power. Sparks from the damaged engine ignited the fuel. The P-38 exploded. A fireball erupted through the jungle canopy. Black smoke rose 500 feet. Rittmeyer circled overhead. He keyed his radio. "Tommy's down. He's down." No parachute, no survivor beacon, no movement in the wreckage. Thomas Maguire Jr. died instantly. He was 24 years old, 38 confirmed kills, 2 kills short of tying Richard Bong, 3 kills short of becoming America's top ace. The remaining 2 zeros escaped. They'd seen the P-38 crash and broke off the engagement. Weaver and Throp shot down 1 0 attempting to attack the P-47s, but that kill wouldn't count for Maguire. His war was over. Rittmeyer remained over the crash site until the P-47s completed their strafing runs. Then the entire formation returned to Dulag. They landed at 9:35. Rittmeyer climbed out of his P-38 and walked directly to the operations tent. He reported Maguire killed in action. The operations officer asked what happened. Rittmeyer explained. Low-altitude turning fight with external tanks still attached. Airspeed too low. Aircraft stalled. No altitude to recover. The operations officer wrote everything down. Then he asked the question everyone would ask later. Why didn't Maguire drop his external tanks before engaging? Rittmeyer didn't have an answer. Nobody did. Every pilot knew the procedure. Drop tanks before combat. It was fundamental. First thing you learned in fighter training. External tanks reduced performance, increased weight, degraded maneuverability, raised stall speed, made the aircraft dangerous at low altitude. Maguire knew all of this. He'd flown 340 combat missions. He'd destroyed 38 enemy aircraft. He was the second highest scoring American ace of the war. He wasn't a rookie making a rookie mistake. He was an expert making an expert's mistake. Overconfidence, aggression, the belief that skill could overcome physics. It couldn't. The P-38L with external tanks had a stall speed of 220 mph in a maximum G turn. Maguire had been flying at 210 mph, below stall speed, at 200 feet altitude. No room for error. One mistake, and physics took over. The wreckage burned for 3 hours. American ground forces reached the crash site the next day. They found Maguire's body still strapped in the cockpit seat. The impact had killed him instantly. They recovered his identification tags, his wristwatch, his wallet. Everything else was destroyed. The P-38 Pudgy V was completely consumed by fire. Nothing salvageable. The ground forces buried Maguire temporarily near the crash site. His body would be recovered later and returned to the United States for proper burial. The 475th Fighter Group held a memorial service on January 9th. Every pilot in the squadron attended. They talked about Maguire's kills, his skill, his aggressiveness, his determination to beat Bong's record. Nobody talked about the drop tanks, not at the memorial, but they talked about it later, in quiet conversations, in the ready room, in letters home. Every pilot understood what had happened. Maguire had pushed too hard. He'd wanted that 39th kill so badly that he'd ignored the fundamentals. He'd kept his drop tanks attached to extend his patrol time. He'd chased a 0 to low altitude. He'd tried to outturn it at minimum speed. Every decision was wrong, and every decision was understandable. Because every fighter pilot in the Pacific Theater felt the same pressure. Richard Bong had 40 kills. He was the standard, the legend. Every American fighter pilot wanted to match that record or exceed it. Maguire had been closer than anyone. 38 kills, too short, so close. The pressure must have been overwhelming. Every mission was a chance to close the gap. Every 0 was potentially kill number 39, the temptation to take risks, to push the limits, to ignore the rules everyone else followed. Because maybe those rules didn't apply to someone with 38 kills. Maybe an expert could bend physics. Maybe skill was enough. It wasn't. Fighter pilots learned this lesson the hard way. Either you respect physics or physics kills you. There's no middle ground. Maguire had forgotten that, or maybe he'd never believed it. He'd survived 340 combat missions by being aggressive, by taking risks other pilots wouldn't take. That aggression had earned him 38 kills. But aggression without discipline is just recklessness, and recklessness kills even the most skilled pilots. The investigation board convened on January 12th. They examined the wreckage. They interviewed Rittmeyer. They reviewed Maguire's training records, his mission reports, his combat history. They reached their conclusion on January 15th. Major Thomas B. Maguire Jr. died due to pilot error, specifically attempting a low altitude, turning engagement with external fuel tanks attached, resulting in a departure stall at insufficient altitude for recovery. The board recommended several changes to training procedures, emphasized the importance of jettisoning external tanks before engaging, stressed the dangers of low-altitude combat, teach pilots to recognize stall warning signs and recover immediately. The board also recommended Maguire for the Medal of Honor, posthumously, for his 38 confirmed kills and extraordinary heroism during 340 combat missions. The recommendation went to 5th Air Force Headquarters, then to General Douglas MacArthur, then to Washington. Meanwhile, Richard Bong was in the United States. He'd left the Pacific Theater in December 1944, sent home for a war bond tour. He was America's top ace. 40 confirmed kills. The Army Air Force wanted to use his fame to sell war bonds. Bong didn't want to leave. He wanted to keep flying combat missions, but orders were orders. He returned to the United States on December 17th. He toured the country giving speeches, meeting politicians, signing autographs. He hated every minute of it. On January 8, 1945, the Army Air Force informed Bong that Major Thomas Maguire had been killed in action on January 7th. Bong's record was secure. Nobody would beat 40 kills. Maguire had been the closest competitor. Now he was gone. Bong could have felt relief, or satisfaction, or validation. He felt none of those things. He felt sick, because Bong understood exactly what had happened. He knew Maguire personally. They'd flown together, they'd competed, they'd pushed each other to be better pilots. The competition had been intense, but friendly. Both men respected each other's skill. Both men wanted to be the best, but Bong had gotten there first. 40 kills. And then he'd been sent home, leaving Maguire at 38 kills, too short. The pressure must have been unbearable. Every mission knowing you're 2 kills short, knowing the record holder has been sent home, knowing this might be your last chance to catch him. That pressure makes pilots take risks. Bad risks, fatal risks. Bong had taken those same risks. He'd chased zeros to low altitude. He'd pushed his P-38 to the limits. He'd made aggressive decisions that could have killed him. But he'd been lucky. Maguire had been unlucky. Or maybe Maguire had pushed just a little bit harder, made one more aggressive turn, held on 1 second too long. The difference between lucky and unlucky is sometimes just 1 second. Bong returned to active duty in February 1945, not combat duty, test pilot duty. The Army Air Force assigned him to Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in Burbank, California. His job was testing the new P-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. Fast, modern, revolutionary, but experimental, dozens of systems that could fail. Bong flew the P-80 throughout the spring and summer of 1945. He tested engines, weapon systems, flight characteristics. On August 6, 1945, the same day the atomic bomb destroyed Hiroshima, Bong took off from Burbank in a P-80A. The jet's fuel pump failed at 300 feet. The engine quit. Bong tried to land straight ahead. The P-80 hit the ground at 150 mpr and exploded. Richard Bong died instantly. He was 24 years old, same age as Maguire. Both men killed after the war was essentially over. Maguire chasing his 39th kill. Bong testing a jet fighter. Both deaths were unnecessary. Both deaths could have been prevented. The Army Air Force awarded Maguire the Medal of Honor on March 5, 1946. His widow received it at a ceremony in Washington. The citation mentioned his 38 confirmed victories and his extraordinary courage during 340 combat missions. It did not mention the drop tanks. It did not mention pilot error. It emphasized heroism and sacrifice, which was appropriate. Because despite the fatal mistake, Maguire's combat record was exceptional. 38 kills in less than 14 months of combat. He'd flown nearly every day. He'd destroyed Japanese aircraft in every type of engagement. Head-on passes, deflection shots, low-altitude chases, high-altitude intercepts. He'd mastered every aspect of air combat, except one. He never learned when to walk away, when to break off an engagement, when to recognize that a kill wasn't worth the risk. That lesson had killed him, but his record remained. 38 confirmed kills, second highest of any American pilot in World War II. Only Richard Bong had more. And Bong was dead too. Both men died at 24. Both men killed by decisions they made in aircraft they'd flown hundreds of times. Maguire's mistake was obvious, chasing a zero at low altitude with external tanks. Bong's death was just bad luck, a fuel pump failure. Nothing he could have done, except maybe he didn't have to be flying that day. Maybe he could have let another test pilot fly the P-80. Maybe he couldn't resist. One more flight, one more test, just like Maguire couldn't resist one more kill. Bölüm 3, Final 2000 kelime, hikaye. Hafize güncelleme. Maguire öldü. 7 Ocak 1945, Negros Island. Bong öldü. 6 Ağustos 1945 test uçuşu. İkisi de 24 yaşında, Maguire. 38 kills, Medal of Honor, posthumous. Bong, 40 kills, Medal of Honor. Sebep, aggression plus drop tanks plus low altitude, the 475th Fighter Group painted Maguire's final score on the squadron scoreboard. 38 confirmed kills, second place, forever. The number would never change. Maguire would never get his 39th kill. He would never tie Bong. He would never beat Bong. The race was over. But the lessons from his death were just beginning. Within 1 week of Maguire's crash, 5th Air Force issued new operational procedures. All fighter pilots were required to jettison external fuel tanks before engaging enemy aircraft. No exceptions. Any pilot who failed to drop tanks before combat would face disciplinary action. The order was explicit. It mentioned Maguire by name. Major Maguire's fatal accident demonstrates the critical importance of proper procedures. External tanks must be jettisoned before maneuvering combat. This is not optional. The order probably saved dozens of lives, maybe hundreds. Because Maguire wasn't the first pilot to die this way. He was just the most famous. Between 1942 and 1945, the Army Air Force lost 83 P-38 pilots to departure stalls. Most occurred at low altitude during combat maneuvers. Most involved external fuel tanks that weren't jettisoned. The P-38 Lightning was an exceptional aircraft, fast, heavily armed, long-range, durable. But it had quirks. The twin-boom configuration created unusual aerodynamic characteristics. The counter-rotating propellers eliminated engine torque but created complex airflow patterns over the wings. At high angles of attack, those airflow patterns could cause one wing to stall before the other. Asymmetric stall. The aircraft would snap roll violently. Recovery required immediate nose-down input and full opposite rudder. But at low altitude, there was no time to recover. Pilots died before they understood what happened. Adding external fuel tanks made everything worse. The tanks disrupted airflow over the wings. They added weight. They increased stall speed by 15 to 20 miles per hour. They reduced roll rate by 30%. Every performance parameter degraded. The P-38 with external tanks was a different aircraft, less responsive, less forgiving, more dangerous. Most pilots understood this intuitively. They dropped their tanks at the first sign of enemy aircraft, but some pilots didn't. Some pilots wanted the extra range, the extra patrol time, the extra opportunities for kills. Maguire was one of those pilots. He kept his tanks because he wanted maximum time over enemy territory, maximum chances to find targets, to add to his score, to catch Bong. The competition consumed him. Everyone who knew Maguire said the same thing. He was obsessed with beating Bong's record. He talked about it constantly. He calculated how many missions he needed to get 2 more kills. He volunteered for every combat mission. He flew when he was supposed to be resting. He pushed himself and his aircraft to the absolute limit. That aggression made him an exceptional fighter pilot. It also killed him. The psychology of ace pilots is complicated. On one hand, aggression is necessary. Fighter pilots must be willing to take risks, to close within gun range of enemy aircraft, to press attacks even when defensive fire is heavy. Passive pilots don't survive. They don't get kills. They don't become aces. But excessive aggression is suicidal. There's a balance. Know when to attack, know when to break off, know when the risk exceeds the potential reward. The best pilots understood this balance instinctively. They were aggressive when the situation favored them. They were cautious when it didn't. They survived hundreds of combat missions because they made smart decisions. Maguire made smart decisions for 340 missions. Then he made one bad decision. That's all it took. The investigation. Board's report was classified. The public never saw it. The official announcement said Major Maguire died in combat against enemy aircraft, heroic death. But pilots in the 475th Fighter Group knew the truth. Maguire had killed himself through pilot error. Word spread quickly. Other squadrons heard about it. Other pilots learned the lesson. Don't chase zeros to low altitude with external tanks. Don't try to outturn enemy fighters at minimum speed. Don't let competition override judgment. These lessons were taught in briefings, emphasized in training, repeated until every pilot understood, and the number of P-38 departure stall accidents decreased. In the first 6 months of 1945, only 12 P-38 pilots died from stalls, down from 83 in the previous 3 years. McGuire's death had taught pilots to respect the aircraft's limitations, but McGuire's legacy was more than just a cautionary tale. His combat record was extraordinary. 38 confirmed kills in 14 months. That's 2.7 kills per month. For comparison, the average American fighter pilot in World War II scored 1.2 kills total during their entire combat tour. Most pilots never shot down an enemy aircraft. Of the approximately 15,000 American fighter pilots who flew combat missions in the Pacific, only 1,300 scored any kills. Only 300 pilots scored 5 or more kills, the threshold for ace status. Only 32 American pilots scored 20 or more kills, and only 2 pilots exceeded 30 kills. Richard Bong with 40, Thomas McGuire with 38. They were the elite, the top fraction of the top fraction. Their kill totals weren't just impressive, they were statistically impossible. Except they weren't impossible, they happened. What made Bong and McGuire different from other pilots? Natural talent certainly played a role. Both men had exceptional eyesight. They could spot enemy aircraft at distances where other pilots saw nothing. Both had superior hand-eye coordination. They could place bullets exactly where they intended at any range, any deflection angle, any speed. Both had the right temperament. They stayed calm under stress. They made quick decisions. They didn't panic when enemy fighters got on their tail. But talent alone doesn't explain 38 kills. Plenty of talented pilots scored 5 kills and stopped. Plenty of skilled pilots died on their 10th mission. Something else separated the top aces from everyone else: aggression, persistence, the willingness to keep flying combat missions day after day, to keep taking risks, to keep pressing attacks. Most pilots reached a point where they'd had enough. They'd survived 100 missions. They'd gotten lucky enough times. They wanted to go home. The top aces never reached that point. They kept flying until they died or the war ended. McGuire flew 340 combat missions. That's more than most pilots flew in their entire career. He volunteered for extra missions. He flew on his days off. He flew when he was sick. He flew when squadron commanders told him to rest. He couldn't stop. Because every mission was a chance for another kill. Another step closer to Bong's record. That drive made him exceptional. It also made him reckless, and recklessness catches up with everyone eventually. For McGuire, it caught up on January 7, 1945, his 341st mission, the one he didn't survive. The story gets stranger when you realize how many similarities exist between Bong and McGuire. Both men were born in 1920. Both were 24 when they died. Both flew P-38 Lightnings exclusively. Both operated in the Pacific Theater. Both scored their first kills in 1942. Both received the Medal of Honor. Both died in aircraft accidents. Both deaths were preventable. The parallels are eerie. It's almost like they were living the same life on parallel tracks, competing, pushing each other, both trying to be the best, both achieving extraordinary success, both dying unnecessarily. After the war, the Army Air Force became the United States Air Force in 1947. The new service needed to honor its heroes. They named bases after top aces. Bong got an Air Force base in Wisconsin, a small training facility. McGuire got something bigger. On January 13, 1948, Fort Dix Army Air Base in New Jersey was renamed McGuire Air Force Base. The base grew into one of the largest Air Force installations in the United States. Today, it's Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, a massive complex supporting thousands of military personnel, fighter squadrons, transport squadrons, refueling tankers, air mobility operations. Every pilot who serves there learns about Major Thomas McGuire, his 38 kills, his Medal of Honor, his aggressive tactics, and his fatal mistake. The P-38 Lightning continued flying combat missions through the end of World War II. The aircraft shot down more Japanese aircraft than any other American fighter in the Pacific theater. Approximately 1,800 confirmed kills. The P-38's long range made it ideal for Pacific operations. Missions often covered 500 to 1,000 miles. Single-engine fighters couldn't make those distances. The P-38's twin engines provided redundancy. If one engine failed, the pilot could fly home on the other. That safety margin saved hundreds of pilots. But the P-38 wasn't perfect. It was complex. It required extensive maintenance. The turbo superchargers frequently failed. The intercoolers leaked. The engines overheated in tropical climates. And the aircraft was unforgiving at low speeds. Stall characteristics were tricky. Recovery procedures were counterintuitive. Pilots who didn't respect the aircraft's limitations died. After World War II, the P-38 was quickly retired. Jet fighters were faster, simpler, more capable. The P-38's last combat mission was in 1949. Most surviving aircraft were scrapped. Only a few were preserved in museums. Today, maybe 30 flyable P-38s exist worldwide. They're rare, valuable, historical artifacts. When a P-38 flies at an airshow, crowds gather. The distinctive twin boom shape, the sound of those Allison engines. The aircraft represents a specific moment in history, when American pilots flew long-range missions over the Pacific, when combat was personal, when you could see your enemy's face as you shot him down. Modern air combat is different. Beyond visual range missile engagements, radar-guided kills from 50 miles away. But in 1943, in 1944, in 1945, fighter pilots fought at close range. Gun camera footage shows P-38s closing to within 100 yards of enemy aircraft, sometimes closer. You could see the Japanese pilot looking back at you. You could see the fear in his eyes. Then you pressed the trigger, and he died. McGuire killed 38 men. That's what 38 confirmed kills means. 38 Japanese pilots who took off and never came home. 38 families who received telegrams. 38 funerals. 38 graves. War sanitizes killing by using terms like confirmed kills and enemy aircraft destroyed. But those weren't just aircraft. They were men, young men. Most were probably 20 to 25 years old. Same age as McGuire. They had families, dreams, futures. McGuire took all of that from them, and he did it exceptionally well. He was one of the most efficient killers in American military history. That sounds harsh, but it's accurate. Fighter pilot aces are killers. That's their job. Kill enemy pilots before enemy pilots kill you. McGuire excelled at his job until January 7, 1945. Then he became one of the 38. One more name on a list. One more pilot who didn't come home. If this story makes you think about the price of competition, you're understanding what really happened over Negros Island. McGuire didn't die fighting the enemy. He died fighting Bong's record. The Zero pilot he was chasing survived, flew home, probably never knew the American pilot crashed. McGuire killed himself. Physics killed him. Drop tanks killed him. But really, competition killed him. The need to be number one, the inability to accept second place. That's what put him at 200 feet altitude doing 210 mph with external tanks in a maximum G-turn. Every decision driven by the need for one more kill, just one more, to close the gap, to catch Bong, to be the best. The irony is that McGuire was already one of the best. 38 kills, second highest American ace of World War II. Medal of Honor recipient, exceptional pilot, legendary status. But it wasn't enough. Second place wasn't good enough. He needed to be first, and that need killed him. There's a lesson there for anyone who competes at anything. Excellence isn't the same as being number one. You can be excellent without beating everyone. You can have an extraordinary career without breaking every record. McGuire couldn't accept that. He needed to be number one, and that obsession destroyed him. Today, if you visit McGuire Air Force Base, you'll find a memorial, bronze plaque, McGuire's photograph, his Medal of Honor citation, his combat statistics, 38 confirmed kills, 340 combat missions, killed in action January 7, 1945, Negros Island, Philippines, age 24. The plaque doesn't mention the drop tanks, doesn't mention the stall, doesn't mention pilot error. It emphasizes heroism, sacrifice, service, which is appropriate for a memorial. But the real story is more complicated, more human, more tragic. McGuire was a hero. He was also human. He made mistakes. His final mistake killed him. That doesn't erase his accomplishments. It just makes him real. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube this story matters. Hit subscribe. We bring you real combat history every day. Stories about pilots who changed the war, pilots who made mistakes, pilots who were human. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Philippines. Our community is worldwide. You're not just watching, you're preserving these memories. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure Thomas Maguire isn't forgotten. These men deserve to be remembered. All of them. The heroes and the ones who made fatal mistakes. Because sometimes they're the same person.